From the four corners of this land we call America the Beautiful, here is a fascinating look at the world around us. RV trips of adventure, discovery, and beauty to find some of the most beautiful and unique places, people, and events on American Odyssey. Join us now as we leave the freeways behind and head for the back roads of America to discover what's just beyond the next bend in the road. There aren't too many people who have not seen the wonders of Utah's canyonlands. Few have had the opportunity to see what it's like to get there from somewhere else, though. And that's what we will do in the next half hour as we start in Idaho and thread our way along the scenic back roads to the Arches National Park in southeast Utah on American Odyssey. Well, here we are once again on the back roads of America, looking for some place to go. That's the city of Boise, Idaho, off in the distance. And I thought I'd kidnap myself from here and take me, body and soul, to Arches National Park in southeast Utah. The ransom I would ask of myself is nothing more than to enjoy an RV trip of a few hundred miles and experience the joy of absorbing the beauty of the American West. By standing in the wagon ruts of the Oregon Trail that lie just east of Boise, Idaho, I was transported for a moment back to the 1840s when a multitude of Americans traveled this way in covered wagons to realize a dream. These wagon tracks were the only tracks west in the 1840s. No superhighways, fast food restaurants, or truck stops, or cities in those days, just dust, Indians, and the graves of those that didn't make it. The trail in places is marked with these concrete markers placed by volunteers who care about our American history. I'd sure like to get my hands on the simple-minded vandal that used this one for target practice. Our destination is Arches National Park in southeast Utah, but by now you know I never start a journey at a destination. The journey is far too much fun for us to do that. At Gooding, Idaho, where do they get these names? I took the road less traveled and left Interstate 84 to follow the scenic byway they call Highway 30. The Snake River tumbles invincibly through this timeless green valley. Over there, across the river on the top of those hills, is where the covered wagons once rolled for Oregon Territory. Look at that. Now, there's the way to go, fishing boat and all. Here along this road is what they called the Thousand Springs of Lost River. For several miles along the river, small waterfalls pour from the cliffs. The geology of this area is such that water from the mountains in the north seeps into the ground and follows a basalt ledge deep underground until it appears here at the riverbank where it pours into the river from the rock cliffs. Getting back to I-84 required crossing the Hansen Bridge that spans the Snake River over 400 feet below. It's quite an interesting bridge, and those 400-foot concrete supports are indeed impressive. There's an awful lot of real estate between here and Salt Lake City, and all of it is awe-inspiring. At one time, this whole valley, all the way to the Great Salt Lake in Utah, was a huge lake called Lake Bonneville. Of course, that was millions of years ago. At that time, it was probably the largest lake in the world. When the West Coast mountains were pushed up by continental drift, Lake Bonneville had no outlet, so it evaporated, and what was left is now the Great Salt Lake and the Bonneville Salt Flats of western Utah. The realization of all that happening here in the distant past is thought-provoking. What you're now seeing are the sand castles of another time put here for us to admire and wonder. With the beautiful Wasatch Mountains as a backdrop, Salt Lake City faces the west towards the Great Salt Lake of Utah. This is the end of the trail, so to speak, of a great westward migration of pioneers looking for a place to settle after their persecution in the Midwest because of their religious belief. This great city is the home of the Mormons, or Latter-day Saints as they call themselves. This statue is a tribute to the thousands of pioneers who, in the decades of the 1840s and 50s, risked everything to find their place in the world. These people traveled the Oregon Trail and died on the trail, just like their Protestant brothers and sisters. And they settled this land by the Great Salt Lake. This is truly one of the most profound stories in American history. In 1853, only 6 years after their arrival in the valley, they started construction of this temple. It took 40 years to complete. The granite used in its construction was quarried in the Wasatch Mountains and brought here by hand cart, each trip taking 3 days. Each year, millions of people come from around the world to visit Temple Square. The temple grounds are open to the public, and everyone is welcome regardless of their religious persuasion. The story of how the Mormons were saved by the seagulls that came to eat the locusts that were decimating their crops is immortalized in this statue in front of one of the early churches on the temple grounds. Every Sunday morning, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir assembles here in the Tabernacle for their Sunday radio and television broadcasts. This tabernacle is another marvel of engineering by the early pioneers. Across the street from the Temple Square is a huge genealogical research library that's also open to the public. And yes, it's true that the genealogical records of millions, both Mormon and non-Mormon, are stored away in a granite mountain east of the city. An old log cabin and a statue showing how they came is all that's left of our incredible past only 150 years ago. On my way to Arches National Park, I spent the night at a roadside park just outside of Helper, Utah. When I awoke the next morning, I explored this little coal mining town that, for all intents and purposes, looked to be a ghost town. There were no cars on the streets, and the town looked completely deserted. Okay, so it was early Sunday morning, and I suppose most small towns would look a little deserted on an early Sunday morning. But anyway, while exploring the deserted streets, I noticed an old hotel whose front door was open. I walked up the dirty, rickety stairs to the floor upstairs to investigate. What I found was the debris from another time left for the ghosts of miners and railroad men who domiciled here in the past to come back and claim. No one came. Their memories of pain and pleasures lost forever among the decaying rubble covering the floors. Another chapter of American frontier history that will never be told. In the early days of railroading, the steam trains got most of their coal from the coal mines around Helper, as this display of mining equipment at the Helper Mining Museum tells us. What an ironic name for those coal digging machines. I doubt there was much joy in working in the coal mines during the early days of the railroads. The town's name of Helper comes from the fact that when the trains going west came to this town, a helper engine was added to the train to help it make it over the mountains. The helper engines were based here. The town of Helper and Kenilworth, a few miles to the east, were not totally devoid of living souls. I did manage to find a few people still living here. Coal production is nothing like it used to be, but a few hardy souls are still hanging on. Most have given up and moved on, leaving only a trace of their presence behind. In the history book I call a cemetery, the names of miners and their families will live on in the hearts and memories of their descendants and a few photographers like me who immortalize them with a modern video camera that they never dreamed of in their time. The little town of Helper, Utah is one of those places along the way that kind of sticks in your mind like peanut butter to the roof of your mouth. I couldn't help but wonder what it might look like, I'll say 50 years or so from now. The drive south from Helper on US 191 past the town of Price is through rolling hills that reminded me of rumpled brown corduroy. At Junction City, where I-70 continues east into Colorado, is where we will be turning right for about 30 miles to Moab, Utah, and Arches National Park. After about 20 miles on US 191, I noticed the hills starting to get noticeably red in color. In the distance, the 12,000-foot La Salle Mountains still wore their headdress of winter snow. The Visitor Center and entrance to Arches National Park is 5 miles north of Moab. After a brief stop at the Visitor Center, I entered a mysterious wonderland of red sandstone and strange rock formations in this 73,000-acre national park of natural wonders. Entering Arches was like landing on a strange planet. Almost everyone that enters this magic kingdom is armed with a camera. Even though it was late spring and the beautiful desert flowers were blooming, I felt compelled to take my shirt off and get into shorts, as it was starting to get rather warm. Well, I think it's time to put my hat on. It's getting hot out here. Hey, you're getting ahead of me. Yes, I did get a nice sunburn that day. If you want a panoramic view of the countryside, you've got to find a good elevated platform. To really enjoy arches means taking your time. Some folks go through here faster than a lottery winner making new friends. If you're in too much of a rush, you'll pass up more than you'll catch up with.
Yeah, they got a living room in there.
I thought I'd seen every kind of recreation vehicle until I spotted these two. It turns out they had their wives with them and decided to do a little sightseeing while they were in these parts. Way to go, fellas. The first arch I came to was Turret Arch. This one is easy to get to from the parking lot. It's just a short walk. Time moves slow in this land. A million years here is just a drop in the bucket compared to the time this landscape has been here. Here I took the time to sit back and relax in the shade of this huge, timeless stone arch that filled the blue sky above me, and let the never-ending river of time flow through my mind. I felt so relaxed here. It made me feel a lot better to see that I wasn't the only one who removed his shirt to cool off. As the sun poured its light into the canyons like melted butter into a crusty cleft of a loaf of bread, I watched a fellow RV traveler penetrate Salt Valley on his way to Devil's Garden. Nothing like locking your keys in the car to complete your day. Where are you going to find a coat hanger out here?
I tell you, it's a funny thing, but I've been going all around the park here, and I've noticed that sometimes I think I'm in Germany. I hear so many German people here.
Mm-hmm. We've had nights here in the campground when we've estimated that nearly 50% of the campers were from Germany.
Really?
There are an awful lot of them visit the park here. I understand that in their guidebooks, Arches is rated as one of the top parks in the United States to visit.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with the currency exchange rate as it is between the United States and Germany, it's attractive for them to visit the United States.
name is Stuart Richardson. I'm from West Jordan, Utah. I'm the activities chairman for the Utah district of the Rotary International. And we have 18 Rotary International students here from all over the world. We have 3 Russians, 2 Mexicans, 2 Brazilians, Sweden, Indonesia, Japan, France, Guatemala, Brazil, said that. Anyway, they're here for the weekend. The Moab Club is hosting us, and they're doing a great job.
As the late afternoon shadows entered the canyons and sat in the corners like uninvited guests, I became aware that each of us are the accumulation of our memories. The memories I'm pressing between the pages of my life, I would like to share with you the only way I can, in music and picture. Here, as I walk through this ageless valley, I see the world in a grain of sand, my creator in a wildflower. I hold infinity in the palm of my hand, and eternity in a single moment. Somewhere in the vast canyonlands of southern Utah is written the story of the earth. Few people go there to search for it. Most who go marvel at the immensity and beauty of the ageless rocks and canyons, shaped by the forces of nature. I guess in their own way they do read the story of our planet, but some see it written by a different author. It really doesn't matter, as long as you come away knowing that there has to be an author. I hope you enjoyed the journey and that you'll join us again on American Odyssey.